All right. Hello, everyone. We're back. Sorry about that. For some reason, it just went offline. So, but we are back, never fear. And I think that we left off with I was just introducing our guest. So, for those of you who maybe were paused, what happened in the last video? We're glad to see you back over here. Welcome back to the show. We're sitting here with Camille Williams. She is the Eating Disorders Program Coordinator at Timberline Knolls, and she's going to be talking with us about holiday coping strategies for those struggling with eating disorders, those in recovery, and their family members and friends. So, Camille, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so you're joining us today from Timberline Knolls in Lamont, Illinois. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what you do at Timberline Knolls?
So I focus on the eating disorder program at Timberline Knolls. So really making sure that our body image group, self-image group, eating disorder, psychoed groups, we have some eating disorder process groups, and make sure that those materials and those groups are appropriate for what our residents need. So I facilitate a lot of those groups. And I also sometimes will take on an individual case or work with clients individually as well. So that's the majority of my role there. There's lots of other little bits and pieces too.
Yeah, of course, always. So talking about the holidays, for those who are watching, maybe if they're a family or a friend or a loved one who's trying to support someone in recovery this season, the holidays can be challenging and stressful for everyone, whether you have an eating disorder or struggle with another mental health issue or not. But what is it about this time that is particularly difficult for those struggling with eating disorders?
Yeah, I think holidays are particularly challenging because holidays tend to be filled with food, which is wonderful because food is very enjoyable and pleasurable and also very anxiety provoking for somebody with an eating disorder. And the holidays are filled with a lot of family, which again is a great thing and can also be challenging depending on different relationships with family members, as well as just kind of that like catch up with family that maybe you haven't seen in a long time. So that's where I think there can be a lot of challenging conversations that can revolve around body image at the holidays. So I think those two pieces can be really challenging for the eating disorder population.
Yeah. And there's just so much, there's this term thrown around her that I've heard called societal ed, which is like societal eating disorder. And it feels like everyone in the holidays just goes crazy. And it's not just about food, it's also alcohol. It's also just consumption of material goods. It's just everything is just so elevated around this time of year that it can be really hard to get a sense of what normal is.
Absolutely.
So a lot of success, or like a lot of planning for success for the holidays comes with just that, being intentional and planning, not just winging it. So when it comes to that first element of the food, what are some plans that people in recovery can put into place to help them feel safe, to help them stay in their recovery throughout this season?
Yeah, so I think each person is going to be different. So it depends on where somebody's at in their recovery journey. At Timberline Knolls, since we're the residential level, we see people pretty early on in their recovery process. So I typically recommend for the holidays following your meal plan. So really trying to be mindful because the whole family might be engaging in some eating disorder, like you said, societal eating disorder behaviors. Where maybe there's a family member or many family members who can restrict all day to have this large meal with the family that they're going to overeat at, or maybe they're grazing all day. And for somebody in recovery, that is not going to be helpful because that family member might be able to just engage in those behaviors that one day, and then they're going to get back on track with intuitive and normalized eating the next day, where somebody with an eating disorder engaging in those behaviors that one day may just lead to a domino effect of continuing. So I think it's really important to reflect on, like, how can I stay true to my meal plan rather than feel like I have to do what everybody else is doing with food.
Yeah, I think that's so important too, and not to compare your eating habits at the time to someone else's, because first of all,
Right.
too, you never know if someone else in your family, especially if it's someone that you don't see all the time, might be struggling as well, struggling
Right.
with an eating disorder. But also just everyone is so different. So there's no way to be able to compare your eating habits with someone else's. And so that confirmation and affirmation to stick with your meal plan has been developed by professionals is so, so key. And they should do that even on a day like Christmas Day or New Year's Day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where it can be also challenging, if they're feeling like, well, I'm going to be the only one doing this, like everybody else is going to be doing their own thing. So I think it can be helpful to maybe ask a supportive family member to join you in following your meal plan. So yeah, for anybody who is a loved one that's watching today, maybe you can be that supportive person where you're going to have normalized meals and snacks with your loved one so that they're not engaging in their meal plan all alone.
Yeah, so good. Okay, so what are some good strategies to deal with family? Um, yes, eating disorders are about the food, and there has to be that consideration when it comes to how to deal with family celebrations and such. But we know that a lot of the anxiety that manifests itself around food comes from these deeper underlying emotional issues that often involve our relationships with our family, the good and the bad. So, what are some strategies in dealing with family members during the holidays, especially maybe some of those comments or looks or feelings of judgment? I mean, how does someone start to go in to this situation where you have a lot of family members around at once?
Yeah. So I think first, I mean, with the holidays, it can be helpful to reflect on what holidays have looked like previously. So if I know there's always a particular family member that is really challenging for me to be around, or that always makes a comment, they're most likely going to do that again this year. So how can I already kind of plan or prepare for that? Are there ways that I can limit my time interacting with that person? Also, I think being mindful of maybe changing plans. So maybe depending on how I'm feeling or where I'm at emotionally and in my recovery right now, maybe that means not attending certain Christmas, family celebrations, or setting a time limit with that. So maybe I'm gonna, just not go to a family party that has somebody who is really gonna jeopardize my recovery. And can I make, a different plan with that? And I think it's helpful just to kind of explore, are there different people that I can spend time with so that I'm not having to see those people who might be triggering or challenging for me to be around. So those might be some things to help with that.
Yeah. And I feel like finding a safe person too to go to if
Mhm.
there's someone who's not safe or it's getting into a conversation or something that's really making you feel uncomfortable, like identifying beforehand who is my safe person that I can go to or that I
Yep,
can have an eyeball with across a room in a conversation and be like, okay, I need a
absolutely.
break.
And having just like, a common phrase that you can say if you are feeling stuck in a conversation, like just excusing yourself to go to the bathroom, or I need to step aside and make a phone call real quick, whatever it may be. But having kind of like, what am I going to say? Because, yeah, in that moment, it might be easy to like freeze and I don't know what to say. I don't know how to get out of this situation. So having a plan of what you can say or what your escape plan or who you can escape to, is really helpful to kind of set that up in advance.
Yeah. You know what also I think, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is that sometimes too, the as people are refeeding and as are getting weight restored and the brain is starting to work better and the therapy is really making an impact on the way you see the world and are changing. Also, sometimes I think, and I remember this happening with me, that situations that previously had filled me with so much anxiety, or family members or people that I had had anxiety about before I went to that party or went with those people. Well, that was a function of my eating disordered brain, right? But then as my brain changed and my body changed and I changed as a person, I had this anxiety again, but I was going into it as a different person, and I was surprised and shocked that, like, wow, I can do okay in this situation. I am okay. I can focus on the relationship with this person rather than like the eyeball rolling stuff that they do or whatever. And I was surprised by how much better it was than I had previously thought. Does that happen? Is that a real thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that speaks to like you being very grounded in your recovery values. So yeah, once I'm starting to separate my eating disorder from my recovery self, if I have somewhat of a foundation in my recovery self and what my recovery self values, um, sorry, I apologize. My dog was squeaking her toy.
Love it. All good.
If I have some foundation in that, then it doesn't really matter what, when somebody else is commenting on their weight or, making a judgment that maybe used to affect me when I was really in my eating disorder brain, because I'm now connected with new values. I think it's tricky if somebody's still kind of like wavering between the two, that then if somebody starts to speak about a lot of comments or values that align with the eating disorder, it could be easy to like fall back into that. So I think it is like, how do I stay connected to my recovery values when I'm around people who are going to have lots of different opinions and values, especially about food and body.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some ways to start new traditions? You've mentioned that a few times in some of your answers so far, but I do like the thought and the emphasis placed upon we don't have to do things the way that we always did, that holidays in recovery can be an opportunity to explore some new traditions. And what might some of those look like?
Yeah, so I think that's where really thinking about what makes the holidays meaningful to you is a good place to start. Because again, like the holidays tend to be about food and family, and that doesn't mean that that's what it has to be about. Maybe I really enjoy gratitude or art or yoga, and how can I incorporate those things into my holiday as well? So can I change up new traditions? Like, do I want to bring a craft to my family's Christmas party? And, everybody can do this craft with me. And I think that could be really powerful because then I'm not having to spend time, around the kitchen island where there's all this food that I'm going to have to figure out what to do with. I'm focusing on making this craft, and maybe other people are going to enjoy that too. Or maybe I'm going to have everybody write down something they're grateful for, and we're going to read that before we share our meal together. So that's going to give me something to do that aligns with what makes the holidays meaningful to me, and maybe can create a new tradition that others in my family enjoy as well.
Yeah, so good. Lindsay has a comment here that I want to bring into the conversation. And Lindsay, thank you for switching over to this video. I'm really glad that you found us. Lindsay says, I've been in recovery for a little and long term. I've tried to ask my mom to help, but she's not healthy for me. I've told her to stop saying she has to lose weight and not eat. I told her she needs to eat. She is or was my safe person. So it sounds like, Lindsay, thanks so much for sharing that with us. And I'm glad to hear you're in recovery and pursuing this, but I understand how challenging it must be to have a relationship with a family member like that. Camille, what advice how can you advise Lindsay?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is challenging, and the holidays may also be a time to have to reflect on the relationships that are healthy and the relationships that are unhealthy. And I think a lot of times when somebody in recovery is letting go of toxic or unhealthy relationships, there's a grieving process with that. It's hard to see, a family member that we want to connect with be struggling to the point that it affects our own recovery. So having to grieve that process, and I think it's really highlighted around the holidays. So Lindsay, I think just allowing yourself to feel what you feel about kind of where that relationship is at, and where that person is at in their own denial or eating disorder. And then navigating like, who do I need to spend the holidays with, or how can I still have some, meaningful time with this person that's maybe not around food, or maybe for not too long. and how do I set some limits with what our conversation is about, and know when I need to walk away from that time with that person. And I think there's just a lot of feelings and a lot of grief that goes into that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Lindsay, thanks so much for sharing that. And just want to say, we've got a couple more questions with Camille. So if you have a question yourself or something that's been really helpful for you, now is the time to jump in with that. So you talk a little bit about this idea of creating a PSA beforehand for family and friends. And when you sent this in the notes that, you wanted to share, I was like, this is such a good idea, especially because now we're so connected on social media. Everyone gets videos. They watch videos in their Instagram stories. They watch YouTube all the time. So this is not like an unusual thing. Like, why is my niece sending me a video? This is not an unusual thing. So what is your idea about maybe sending a PSA to family and friends beforehand?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it can be helpful to just let people know. And you're right, social media is a great platform. There's lots of different ways that we can provide some education, because I think a lot of people just don't know the impact that commenting on food and body image can really have for somebody with an eating disorder. It is just so normalized in our world that it's just the conversation like, hey, this person lost weight or this person gained weight, and oh my gosh, this is so much food. Like, those comments just happen at the holidays and can be really challenging. So using social media to our advantage, and trying to educate people through that as a resource. So that's where it can really be whatever your family needs to know. If they tend to always talk about diets and weight loss, maybe putting that out there that like, hey, that's really challenging. And everybody's going to have their own comfort level. Like, some people may not be open about their eating disorder. So just leaving it in general terms that like, hey, it's really challenging for the holidays to be about weight loss. Like, let's focus on gratitude this year, or like the accomplishments that we had over the past year that aren't based on our bodies, because our worth is not tied up in that. So I think it's just an opportunity to educate, or just let people know, like, yeah, I've been working through recovery with an eating disorder, and this is how my loved ones can support me. So then that at least is putting it out there. Ultimately, people may still say and do what they do, and that's a way to try to educate or try to inform people.
Yeah, I love that. Such a great idea. So, and you mentioned in the answer to the question with Lindsay, and it's a great segue to this. Okay, so knowing your limits and setting your boundaries, because oftentimes too, I think we start off optimistic about how we're going to be able to handle a situation or an evening or a string of gatherings, one right next to each other. But then you get tired, emotionally, spiritually, physically, but particularly emotionally. And when we get physically tired too, then our ability to cope well in situations that are emotionally challenging decreases. So how can people know their limits well and set those boundaries ahead of time?
Yeah, and that's another point where I think it's great to think about how holidays have worked in the past. So if you've noticed, like, feeling really drained after one family party, and feeling more refreshed after another one, like, those are indicators and clues to what's working and what's not working, and maybe where a limit needs to be set. So yeah, if there is, a particular gathering that is really challenging, maybe I typically spend, 6 hours at that place. What would it be like to cut that down to 3? Or what do I feel like I need to do with that? And I think in the moment, just starting to try to be aware of any emotions or feelings that you have. Again, somebody who's in an eating disorder is probably not as aware of those things. So ideally, being maybe a little bit more into recovery, that's going to make it easier to be aware of emotions and maybe start to notice needs. I think the most important thing is, though, because I think that awareness can be there. I think there can be this pressure that, like, well, no, I've got to be able to stay, like, everybody stays at this party all day, so I need to be able to do that too. So then it's less about like people not being aware of what they need, just people not doing what they need to do. So I think really just like giving yourself permission that your life and your recovery is more important than staying at a holiday party all day. So really having to like give yourself permission to leave and to notice like when I've had enough, I need to go. And that's okay. Like I'm doing that for my life and for my recovery. Um, so I think that's kind of the most important piece, is just really giving yourself permission to do the things that you need to do.
Yeah. 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 You don't have to do what everyone else is doing it just because they're doing it.
Yeah.
You have to put you first. Lindsay says just quickly, oh, we've got two great questions. So Lindsay says, hey, Camille, you're awesome. She said, can my safe person be someone on the phone?
I think so. I think a safe person can be anybody who helps you like reconnect with your recovery values and what you need. Yeah, I mean, I think any type of connection is great. I think we do need like face-to-face connection. And I think like over the phone connection, especially because that can be quick and easy. Maybe if I'm not able to, go out, with a friend right now or today, I could still connect with that person over the phone. So absolutely.
Yeah. So Amanda also is here. Hey, Amanda, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much. So Amanda says, hi, Camille and Kirsten, two of my favorite people. She's a former TK resident saying hi from Missouri. You both are such a blessing, and I'm so excited to hear your words of wisdom. Thank you, Amanda, so much for your kind words. And she's probably signing on there at the beginning. So it's great to have you here. And Amanda writes a really great blog called Choose Harmony, and you can Google that, or you can visit her Facebook page as well. She writes about a lot of her experiences at Timberline Knolls, and she's an advocate herself, and it's really cool to see that. So last question about boundaries, though. What encouragement can you give someone who really needs to say no to some things? No to certain gatherings, no to going out with certain people. Can you just affirm, because sometimes it's like, I know I need to say no to more things. I know I need to say no to these people. I know I need to say no to this situation. But I still doubt if that's the right thing to do. Can you just affirm that for some people right now, that it's okay to say no this holiday season?
Yes, absolutely. Please say no. I think that is one of the most challenging things for people with eating disorders, to say no. I mean, I think a lot of people who struggle with eating disorders are people pleasers. So just want to make everybody else happy, want the holidays to be great for everyone else. So I'll sacrifice whatever I have to so that everybody else is happy and everything can just go smoothly and the way it's supposed to. And no, it's time to say no. Clearly saying yes to everything hasn't worked. If it led to an eating disorder, perfectionistic tendencies, caring for others above self. So it is going to be really uncomfortable. I hear a lot of people say that they feel really selfish when they say no, or when they're choosing themselves or their recovery. And it's absolutely not selfish. It's you finally caring for you rather than always putting others ahead of you.
Yeah. And last question I have for you, because I've gotten it a lot, and I think it's a really good one to hear from an expert, and that is, so what happens if someone does do something that is not in line with their recovery values during the holidays, right? They get tired, something, I mean, it happens. We make mistakes, we fail, recovery is not a linear journey. It's like, like that. We've seen those pictures, those memes. So what advice would you give someone who, let's say they do have a slip up or whatever their term is for it, that they do something that's not in line with their recovery values? Obviously, there's going to be overwhelming feelings of guilt and shame and wanting to do the self-flagellation thing. But what should they do instead?
Yeah, so I think that's where acknowledging that, like you said at the beginning, holidays are incredibly stressful. Just thinking about like the time and energy that we put into, going to gatherings. Maybe we're making food and buying gifts and wrapping. There's a lot of extra stuff that goes into the holidays, or even trying to like catch up on work to have a couple of days off around the holidays. So all of that is really, really challenging challenging and stressful, on top of everything else we've talked about, the family, the food, all of that. The New Year's resolutions, we didn't even talk about that. That could be a whole nother talk.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think just really noticing and appreciating that this is a really difficult time. And so, of course, it's going to be easy for mistakes to happen, for challenges in, behaviors, slips to happen. So I think just noticing that, like, hey, it happened, and what's the next best thing for me to do? And I think also just being honest. So not feeling kind of that, or not letting the shame, because the shame may be there, not letting the shame lead to secrecy. So can I notice that, yeah, I struggled, I had a slip up, and can I be honest about it and get the support that I need to get back on track, rather than allowing that shame to keep my secret for me. And then now maybe I'm burying myself deeper and deeper into this hole.
Yeah, so good. Well, Camille, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on. It's been great to see you again and to get some of these very, very practical tools so that we can make the holidays and recovery as successful as possible, and can move on from them in a way that honors yes? That's my husband. He's leaving. Yes, I'm done. No, I'm not done. Hold on, everyone. I'm signing.
Hello.
This is my husband. We're doing wedding thank you cards right now. There you go, darling.
Happy Christmas, everybody.
Here at Weekly Hope, we keep things really authentic, just so you know. No, that was my husband, and Camille has a new daughter. I just recently got married. So we're all creating lots of new holiday traditions this year. But he was just popping in to say hello and goodbye. But Camille, it has been so wonderful to have you, and we really appreciate you being a frequent guest on the show, and coming back with lots of your insight and just really, really practical tools to help people and their families and recovery. Has been really, really, really wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's been great.
Yeah. So we are going to sign off now, and I just want to let all of you know that this is actually our last Weekly Hope of the year of 2019, but it's also our very last episode of Weekly Hope here on Facebook Live. It has been such a tremendous joy to be able to put these Facebook Lives together, to have you here as a part of this conversation, and every week to welcome some of the most brilliant and caring, compassionate experts from the field of eating disorder treatment, to be on here to offer their wisdom and to answer your questions. It has just really been a joy. So we're moving in a little different direction in 2020, but all of us here at Eating Disorder Hope want to say thank you for being such a wonderful audience, and want to encourage you these resources will continue to be available for you. So as I mentioned, on our videos page, on the Facebook page, as well as on our YouTube channel, on the Eating Disorder Hope YouTube channel, all these videos will continue to live there. So please feel free to share these resources with others. The whole point of doing this is to encourage you, wherever you are in the recovery journey, to give you a life-saving information, hopefully, and to give you the tools that you need to seek the help and treatment that you need and deserve, and to be able to support your loved one if they're in recovery. So all of these resources will still be here, and we just want to make those available for you to share with whomever you wish, or to watch them again. So for the very last time, Elsa, who's fallen asleep on my lap, Elsa and I say goodbye. Thank you for all of your support over the past years. All of us at Eating Disorder Hope say a big thank you. And we will see you again in some way, shape, or form in 2020. Have a wonderful, happy holiday season. A very happy new year to you all. And enjoy the holiday season. Ciao.